Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator here. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, yada yada yada. I got in the mail today my proof copy of the first adventure module I've written for Escape to Ancient Egypt. And I figured I'd take the occasion to talk a little bit about the game itself and its rule systems a bit, since some people have expressed curiosity over it. And I've certainly gotten probably the most positive reception of this one over the other games I've put out so far. I guess we're gonna call it the total party system for the time being. It's real basic and straightforward. Characters have three attributes: body, mind, and spirit. They, for a typical human, they range between 1 and 3. Each starts off at 1, and characters get 3 points to distribute amongst them as long as none of them go over 3. This means they can either just kind of level everything out and just be average, or they can potentially peak in something at the cost of something else. But it gives them a little bit of wiggle room, especially since they have 3 options of what's going to be detracted from instead of just a binary of 1 or 2. Each attribute has a status attached to it, which is kind of like your hit points, except, well, there's health, sanity, and morale. Health would be, your physical body. Sanity is, how well you're keeping your mind together. Morale is, your spirit, your willpower, that kind of a thing. All of them, if knocked down to 0, become incapacitated and puts the character at risk of being lost. If your character loses their mind or completely just gives up, then they're just as much lost as a character that physically dies. So it creates a dynamic where you're not just having to worry about keeping your character from being, physically harmed, but you're also having to actually worry about their mental and emotional health. So you then get several skill categories that you can put skill points in. There's 3 categories. Each category has 3 skills within it. There's a category for each of the attributes: your basic body skills, your basic mind skills, your basic spirit skills. There's also a combat skills category, a category called strange, which is called that because the time period that the game is set is not common skills for people to be good with much of foreign languages or know a lot about art or be really good with science and stuff like that. And there's also psionics, although you have to take a real specific kind of occupation to have access to that category. You can't automatically put points into psionics or other kind of magic skills like infernal skills or divine skills. You do get to choose a job that is one of the characters, basically what they were doing in the expedition in 1911 that was going to Thebes. It ranges from being a porter to being a cleric, archaeologists, security personnel. Like there's I want to say, without looking again, there's probably, I think, like 10 or 12 different options. Each one gives you a skill category that you get to put a few more extra points in, and gives you 1 item of equipment. You also then get to choose from a couple different lists of items, 1 or 2 additional items that your character actually has on them at the time that they're sent back in time at the beginning of the game. This can even include them having like a pet, like a dog or like a messenger pigeon or a donkey that they had that was helping them in the central tomb site right at the time that they were sent back in time. A thing that I do with this game, and I do with pretty much the other games I've written, is personally as a DM, I feel that it's good to have a big open-ended sandbox game world where characters feel that they're free to kind of go anywhere and can engage all sorts of different kinds of plots and stuff, and has a multitude of different possible endings. But I do hate that thing where that you start off your campaign and the characters don't really know each other or have a reason to be working together. They're all in a tavern. You really want them to talk to that cool dude at the bar, but instead they're trying to figure out how to do things with their own intricate backstories that they came up with totally independently of each other, and in some instances somewhat independent of you as the DM. Well, my games try to address that by giving relatively focused, bottlenecked character origins. Characters, there's a specific point in the game world where the game begins, and characters all kind of have a built-in reason why they're together and would continue to work together throughout things. But from that point, they're kind of free to explore. And in some ways, beyond the fact that there's a bunch of glitchy supernatural horror and like ancient alien kind of stuff in this game, there's also just kind of a brutal survival aspect. I mean, beyond the fact that they have very like low amounts and all their various kinds of status, you know, an average character, it's their attribute +2 for that relevant status point. So, and weapons do just fixed damage rates. Your average attack does 1 point of damage, but occasionally, you know, firearms and stronger things will do 2 or 3 points of damage all at once. And when you only have like maybe 4 or 5 hit points, getting, you know, taking 4 damage all in one fell blow, you know, it's serious. But like in real life, you know, getting shot with a rifle, you know, you have to be a pretty tough son of a bitch to like not be instantly like incapacitated by that. So this game has that. But even just ignoring that aspect of it, though, the characters are dropped off, you know, 3,000 years in the past, not able to speak the language of the time unless one of the players just happened to randomly choose an ancient language as something that they were proficient in, if on the limited narrow circumstances that allow characters to even have an option on what language they choose. Each character will have a flag, which is basically kind of like just a notation for what which of the 6 countries that were sponsoring this expedition that they come from. So they can be American or British, German, French, Ottoman Turkish, or actual Egyptian from British occupied Egypt from the early, you know, 1900s. And they'll have whatever their language is, and if they don't speak English natively, they will also know English. Your 2 English-speaking selections from either playing a British or an American character, they are allowed to choose what that other language is. But it's entirely kind of left up to the player to you know, like, they might just choose another language from the list of the other countries just because it's written there in front of them, and it might not occur to them that, hey, could I speak ancient Greek? Which would be very handy. But so in most instances, players are going to like wind up at 3,000 years in the past, no real idea why they're there, no one to gain exposition from, and just kind of like not even really be able to for sure say that like where they are and when they are. They'll probably be able to like recognize it as Egypt after a relatively short amount of time, but like knowing the exact date, like no one at that time, even if they could translate the math, would use a calendar that would indicate, you know, like what their year in BC is to someone from, you know, the 20th century. Now, after time, they can use their language skills as they're immersed around the ancient Egyptian language. They'll start to like be able to pick it up and learn other languages. The languages skill in the game is designed not to like list how many languages you know, but like give you a mechanic to learn a language, and also to, in the meantime, have it to like, you know, pantomime what you want and draw, you know, stuff in the dirt with a stick to try to get the point across, which is always going to be like really hard, complicated things, but that adds to that initial frustration of, you know, like we're in a very alien environment despite everything being packaged in this nice, comfortable, we're on a nice little, you know, quaint Egyptian game. And it's just going to be like Stargate, where everywhere we go, everyone conveniently speaks English, except it's not. So, you know, after you got your skills and your attributes and your status figured out, you know, you choose a couple items of equipment. The stuff the characters choose, or the players choose for their characters at this point, is extremely like critical to how things might evolve, beyond the fact that a few of these items might turn out to be like secretly magic items or something that will be activated once they're in the past, or if they do certain things. Other items are just going to be incredibly useful, like having to like decided I want the box of 100 matches. You know, over time, like those 100 matches can be extremely useful and you know, kind of nail biting if you're wasting them. You know, whether or not you choose a weapon, but don't choose the box of ammo as your second piece of equipment or something like that. There's also the aspect of the fact that like ancient Egypt, you know, has coins, but they're not super common. Regular everyday bartering on a small scale is how like most people like clothe and feed themselves. And you know, characters aren't just gonna be able to like walk up to a shop and like, you know, trade direct value for things. And in fact, like a lot of the stuff that they might think of as being high value items as 20th century people, to ancient people, like they're not going to know what to do with a fucking camera. They're not going to care. But some relatively basic, simple things that might not occur to them, like they will get much more value in terms of purchasing power out of trading their modern clothes and stuff. You know, if you're, you know, want to feel inclined to go into that level of complication, or you could just use coins and just treat a copper as being like the rough buying power of what a dollar bill nowadays would get you. I leave tidbits for that in there. Your character also have a few limits. That's like their encumbrance level. I do encumbrance not by weight, but just kind of like a real generic. This is how many items your character can carry on them. If they're over encumbered, all they can do is use a move action, but they're holding too much stuff. What item means is intentionally vague, and stuff that they can fit in a pocket easily that's light doesn't count, and clothing and other things that they're wearing does not count towards that limit. Also, potentially you can do stuff like having backpacks and other kinds of carrying equipment actually add to their encumbrance, because it would count for, you know, putting stuff in that and helping distribute the weight to make them carry it easier. I feel like, yeah, those are the kind of basic mechanics. And like I said, the premise of the game starts the characters off in this bottleneck spot. What they choose to do is going to shape a lot of it, because like I said, you're not going to be able to have an exposition NPC ready and made right there to tell them what they're supposed to do. It's kind of left to them. Are they going to go over here and check out this village? Are they going to try to get back to the river? Are they... You know, what happens? I have like a randomized first encounter that you can use in the main rule book. You don't have to, though. For that matter, you can come up with a completely different origin scenario for everybody. And because of the fact that since the characters are as fragile as they are, if they do, you know, if the player loses their character, they're going to need to replace them with somebody. And it's not like there's a lot of other 20th century expeditions sent back in time traveling around them in the desert for them to bump into and recruit someone from. So there's a second chapter in this that's strictly about creating characters that are from this time period. And if you want, you can totally ignore the whole time traveling expedition from the future thing and just use that chapter for your initial character creation and just kind of freeball your own ancient Egypt setting kind of game. I mean, the whole point, my philosophy on all this is like, you know, I appreciate that you're giving my game a chance, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'm available if you can get hold of me through, you know, Twitter or through YouTube comments if I happen to notice them. They don't get too buried down the line. You know, I can address questions you might have, or things, you know, explain something further. In fact, feedback on what people who are actually buying these things or most curious to learn more about is helpful for me, because then I know what kind of source books that you're going to actually, you know, want to actually look at. But the point of this adventure is like not to be like the greatest act of creative writing you've ever seen, and in some ways it's kind of a sham. The whole curse of Lord Mahoney's fedora, which I will at least say, if there's an award for like worst game titles of the year, this should definitely be in the running, because that's a bad name for my adventure. But the basic premise is it takes the random encounters that are in the main rule book and strings them out in a way to create an example of how to run and write an adventure for this. It gives like guidance so that you as the GM can learn like how the kind of dynamics of the rule system are intended to work, and the various scenes and encounters that the characters will go through will teach the players the various basic things of like, this is, you know, how your endurance runs out, you know, if you've used too much of your travel move time, you know, you want to use skills like this for this, skills like that for that, all that kind of shit. And a little nice adventure that in and of itself is an expedition to ancient Egypt within Expedition to Ancient Egypt, as the characters have to basically figure out like what the hell happened to Lord Mahoney. So anyway, I guess that's about all I can really say about that for now, without just kind of getting too off in the reeds of not even really knowing what the hell I'm talking about. So on that note, tell me in the comments below that, you know, this is all bad, and you can't stand my channel, and you're unsubscribing right now, and because I would. And be sure to hit like and subscribe after doing that, and share it and tell your friends to subscribe so they can unsubscribe. And have a good one. Stay waspinated.